This is Linda Favela, Ezekiel 27. In the last chapter, Yahweh said Tyre would be destroyed. It's a foreshadowing of the destruction Jesus will wreak on the earth when he returns. In this chapter, Yahweh describes in some detail how Tyre was connected to the world through trade. We should have our ears open for more clues about the end times. Verse 1. Yahweh's word came again to me, saying, You, son of man, take up a lamentation for Tyre, and tell Tyre, You who dwell at the entry of the sea, who are the merchant of the peoples to many islands, thus says the Lord Yahweh, You, Tyre, have said, I am perfect in beauty. Your borders are in the heart of the seas. Your builders have perfected your beauty. They have made all your planks of cypress trees from Senir. They have taken a cedar from Lebanon to make a mast for you. They have made your oars of the oaks of Bashan. They have made your benches of ivory inlaid in boxwood from the islands of Kittim. Your sail was of fine linen with embroidered work from Egypt, that it might be to you for a banner. Blue and purple from the islands of Elisha was your awning. Comment in verses 3 and 4, Tyre was at the entry of the sea, meaning she was on the seacoast, and her borders were in the heart of the seas, meaning she extended her influence across the seas. She traded with the islands and coastlands and became rich. She was a thing of beauty in verse 4. In verses 5 to 7, Yahweh compared Tyre to a trading ship. If Tyre were a trading ship, her planks would be of cypress from Senir, her oars from the oaks of Bashan, her rowing benches made of boxwood from Kittim inlaid with ivory, her sail made of embroidered linen from Egypt, and her awning of blue and purple from Elisha. In other words, if Tyre were a ship, should be a glorious one. Senir is another name for nearby Mount Hermon. Bashan is the land east of the Sea of Galilee. Kittim is the island of Cyprus, about 140 miles away by sea, and Elisha is unknown. Now, still comparing Tyre to a sailing ship, verse 8. The inhabitants of Sidon and Arvad were your rowers. Your wise men, Tyre, were in you. They were your pilots. The old men of Gebal and its wise men were your repairers of ship seams in you. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in you to deal in your merchandise. Persia, Lud, and Put were in your army, your men of war. They hung the shield and helmet in you. They showed your beauty. The men of Arvad with your army were on your walls all around, and valiant men were in your towers. They hung their shields on your walls all around. They have perfected your beauty. Comment in verses 8 and 9, Tyre's ships were for merchandising. The men who did the rowing, navigating, repairing, and sailing came from various coastal cities such as Sidon, 23 miles up the coast, Arvad, 117 miles up the coast, Gebal, 65 miles up the coast, and from Tyre itself. In verses 10 and 11, Tyre's army was from all over. They defended her walls and manned her defensive towers. They were from Persia, which is modern Iran, Lud, which corresponds to western Turkey, Put, which corresponds to the northern coast of Africa next to Egypt, and Arvad again, 117 miles up the coast. Soldiers from those far-flung places hung the shield and helmet in Tyre. Her system of defense was a thing of beauty. So Tyre was a rich, cosmopolitan, and well-defended city that attracted people from far and near. Now, as to Tyre's very long list of international trading partners, to start with, there was, verse 12, Tarshish was your merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches. They traded for your wares with silver, iron, tin, and lead. Javan, Tubal, and Meshach were your traders. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass for your merchandise. They of the house of Togarmah traded for your wares with horses, war horses, and mules. The men of Dedan traded with you. Many islands were the market of your hand. They brought you horns of ivory and ebony in exchange. Syria was your merchant by reason of the multitude of your handiworks. They traded for your wares with emeralds, purple, embroidered work, fine linen, coral, and rubies. Comment in verse 12, Tarshish was another sailing and merchandising sea power. There are 24 mentions of Tarshish in the Bible. There are no clues to its location except that it was so far away it was mind-boggling. They traded for Tyre's products with silver, iron, tin, and lead. In verse 13, Javan, Tubal, and Meshach are Greece and parts of modern Turkey. They traded for Tyre's goods with slaves and brass. In verse 14, Togarmah is about 250 miles north in what's now Turkey. They traded for Tyre's wares with horses and mules. In verse 15, Dedan traded with Tyre. It was an oasis city in Arabia, about 450 miles south. Many coastlands traded with ivory tusks and ebony wood. These products must have originated from 2,000 or more miles away in sub-Saharan Africa. So although Tyre was directly connected to seaports, the products from those places might have come from very far inland. This reminds your narrator that during the Lewis and Clark expedition, their party traded a metal pot to the Native Americans in what is now Montana, and when they reached the Pacific coast, they saw the same pot in the possession of a native 700 miles from where they traded it. So even in the ancient world, sought-after products were transported great distances. In verse 16, Syria was a close neighbor to the north and west and traded with emeralds, purple fabric, embroidered work, fine linen, coral, and rubies. Going on about Tyre's trading partners, verse 17. Judah and the land of Israel were your traders. They traded wheat of Minnith, confections, honey, oil, and balm for your merchandise. Damascus was your merchant for the multitude of your handiworks, by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches, with the wine of Helbon and white wool. Comment the locations in verses 17 and 18 traded with Tyre by land and were relatively close. We know about Judah and Damascus. Minnith was east of Judah in Ammonite territory. Helbon was very close in the plain of Lebanon. Verse 19. Vedan and Javan traded with yarn for your wares. Bright iron, cassia, and calamus were among your merchandise. Dedan was your trafficker in precious cloths for riding. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar were the merchants of your hand. In lambs, rams, and goats, in these they were your merchants. The traders of Sheba and Ramah were your traders. They traded for your wares with the chief of all spices, and with all precious stones and gold. Haran, Cana, and Eden, the traders of Sheba, Asher, and Chilmad, were your traders. These were your traders in choice wares, in wrappings of blue and embroidered work, and in chests of rich clothing, bound with cords and made of cedar among your merchandise. The ships of Tarshish were your caravans for your merchandise. You are replenished and made very glorious in the heart of the seas. Comment in verse 19, Vedan is unknown. Javan is now Greece, and they traded with cassia, which is like cinnamon, and calamus, which is a plant used in traditional medicine. In verse 20, again, Dedan was an oasis city in northwest Arabia, about 450 miles south. In verse 21, Kedar was in the same vicinity in northwest Arabia. In verse 22, Sheba and Ramah are southwest Arabia, about 1,500 miles away. Given the distance, it's not surprising they traded in items that didn't take up much space and were easy to transport, such as spices, precious stones, and gold. In verse 23, Haran is a city about 340 miles northwest and still exists today. Cana is unknown. Eden is probably Mesopotamia, about 700 miles away. Sheba was southwest Arabia, 1,500 miles away. Ashur and Chilmad are what's now north-central Iraq, about 500 miles away. In verse 25, quote, the ships of Tarshish were your caravans for your merchandise, end quote. So ships of Tarshish came to Tyre as well. In verse 25, Tyre was made glorious as a hub of world trade. Verse 26, your rowers have brought you into great waters. The east wind has broken you in the heart of the seas. Your riches, your wares, your merchandise, your mariners, your pilots, your repairers of ship seams, the dealers in your merchandise, and all your men of war who are in you, with all your company which is among you, will fall into the heart of the seas in the day of your ruin. Comment in verses 26 to 27, an east wind sank the glorious ship called Tyre in the heart of the seas. Down went her riches, wares, merchandise, mariners, pilots, repairers of ship seams, merchants, men of war, and all who were among her. They fell into the heart of the sea in the day of their ruin. It's a similitude of the great and terrible day of the Lord when he comes destroying everyone who gathered themselves against him. Revelation 19:11-21. But what was Tyre's sin that would make the city a similitude of the sinful world in the end times? So far in the chapter, Tyre's done nothing that seems offensive. They got rich trading, but Yahweh didn't seem to find fault with that, per se. He seemed to admire it. Let's keep reading. Verse 28. At the sound of the cry of your pilots, the pasture lands will shake. All who handle the oars, the mariners, and all the pilots of the sea will come down from their ships. They'll stand on the land and will cause their voice to be heard over you and will cry bitterly. They'll cast up dust on their heads. They'll wallow in the ashes. They'll make themselves bald for you and clothe themselves with sackcloth. They'll weep for you in bitterness of soul with bitter mourning. In their wailing they'll take up a lamentation for you and lament over you, saying, Who is there like Tyre, like her who is brought to silence in the middle of the sea? Comment, the problem with the trading system and with the wealth starts to emerge in verses 27 to 32. When Tyre fell, everyone connected with her trading system mourned and despaired, to the extreme, as if all were lost. They said, Who is there like Tyre? In contrast, when rich and righteous Job lost everything, he tore his clothes and shaved his head in mourning as well. But he also fell to the ground, worshipped, and said, Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. Yahweh gave, and Yahweh has taken away. Blessed be Yahweh's name. End quote. So Tyre and the company with her had their hope in materialism. When their riches dried up, they were left with nothing. It's that simple. Now Yahweh's final comments, verse 33. When your wares went out of the seas, you filled many peoples. You enriched the kings of the earth with the multitude of your riches and of your merchandise. In the time that you were broken by the seas and the depths of the waters, your merchandise and all your company fell within you. All the inhabitants of the islands are astonished at you, and their kings are horribly afraid. They're troubled in their face. The merchants among the peoples hiss at you. You've become a terror, and you'll be no more. Comment in verses 33 and 34, when Tyre fell, all her company fell with her. When Jesus was a baby and his parents presented him to God at the temple, an old prophet named Simeon said, This child is destined to be the cause of the falling and the rising of many, Luke 2:34. When Jesus returns in power and glory, many will fall. In verse 35, the inhabitants of the islands and coastlands were astonished at Tyre's downfall. And similarly, many on the earth will be astonished at the sudden destruction of the Antichrist system. It'll be a system of economic dominance, Revelation 13:17, but it'll collapse in 1 hour like a ship going down. In verse 36, the merchants and peoples will hiss when Tyre falls. Shriek is a better word. They'll shriek in sudden terror. And when Jesus returns, every materialistic and godless person connected to the Antichrist system will shriek in sudden terror. Your narrator sees very little difference in the fall of Tyre here and the fall of Mystery Babylon in Revelation 18. Mystery Babylon's connected with seagoing trade and is a symbol of economic dominance. Everyone connected with Mystery Babylon despaired when she was destroyed. But unlike Tyre, Mystery Babylon is also connected heavily to false religion and the persecution of God's people through the ages. Both cities are similitudes of what will happen on the day of the Lord's return. Ezekiel 28 is next.